Now, one of the most asked questions in the Naruto community is who would have won the Chunin exams in part 1 if it wasn't interrupted. I was also curious about this myself, so I decided to reread part 1 again all the way up to the Chunin exams so that I could properly analyze each character to see who would have actually won. Now, this wasn't easy by any stretch of the imagination, but I think I came up with the correct answer. But before we get into the big reveal, we need to first understand a few things about the Chunin exams. Now, these exams are biannual joint exams held by all the hidden ninja villages to decide which of the genins gets promoted to Chunin. The exams are normally split into 3 stages: the written exams, the practical exams, and the 1v1 versus battle at the end. However, winning the Chunin exams doesn't mean that you would become a Chunin, as that's decided based on your leadership skills, of which is irrelevant in this case since we're talking about who would have won the exams, not who would have been promoted. We're only going to focus on the participants that made it to the 3rd stage of the event per the matchups provided by the proctor. We will decide who wins each matchup using feats and statements, then have them move on to the next level to take on their next opponent. We'll be going from left to right as they did in the exams, which means that we're going to start with Naruto vs Neji. Now, using feats from the battle itself, we see that Neji is faster than base Naruto, that much is undeniable. Naruto isn't able to land a hit until he tricks Neji using his shadow close, only for Neji to block the attack using rotation at the last minute. What this shows is that Neji's ability to block/repel attacks using his chakra is faster than his actual bodily movements. The reason why that's the case is because we see that Neji wasn't able to react to the attack using his actual bodily movements. He had to use rotation to block Naruto's attack at the last minute. He was even surprised using his Byakugan. So what this implies is that Neji's actual movement speed is slower than his chakra activation speed. What this also shows, as I mentioned earlier, is that Naruto and his clones are able to bypass Neji's all-seeing Byakugan eye that allows him to see almost a full 360 degrees per Tenten's statement by using just pure speed. This is proven by Neji actually being surprised by the attack and being forced to use rotation as a last-ditch effort to block it. Now, Tenten also said that Neji's rotation ability is an absolute defense that's even more powerful than Gaara's, but that statement is made from ignorance since Tenten has no idea how strong Gaara's defense was pre the 1-month time skip, nor does she know how strong it is right now. So this statement can't be used to confidently scale Neji's rotation to Gaara's defense. Now, there is an actual argument to be made that Neji's defense is actually stronger than Gaara's, but we'll get into that later on. Now, what we can also take from this battle is that Naruto has the stamina/durability to tank any attack Neji throws at him, as seen with Naruto being able to tank and withstand Neji's 8 trigram 64 palms technique, which surprised Neji since he implied that Naruto wouldn't be able to stand after the attack. The attack is also hyped up to be the strongest attack within the Hyuga clan by the leader himself, yet Naruto is able to withstand it, albeit now without the ability to use his chakra. This is when Naruto remembers that he has the 9-tailed fox and easily draws on it, which boosts Naruto's power to a different level. A key thing to note here is that Naruto's chakra points are still disabled as shown in the panel of the 9-tails chakra filling up his chakra network. This will be relevant for his fight with Gaara later on. Now, as we see a Naruto now amped by the 9-tails chakra, which Naruto says is even more stronger than what he used during the training arc, the same training arc which Naruto summoned Gamabunta, which also means that this Naruto could have also summoned Gamabunta against Neji, but decided not to. And before you say that Naruto wasn't planning on using Gamabunta in the Chunin exams, earlier on before the exams began, Naruto said that he wasn't worried about those guys, referring to Neji and the other fellows in the Chunin exams, because he can now summon a frog. This clearly implies that Naruto was planning on using Gamabunta, but only as a last resort. As it relates to speed, which is really what was displayed here, Naruto and Neji seem to be at a similar level of speed since they were able to both react and dodge each other's attacks. Well, at least up until the point when Naruto almost speed blitzed Neji, as seen by Neji saying no exclamation point rotation at the very last minute, which is what he used to block Naruto's attack, which again proves that his ability activation speed is way greater than his actual movement speed. Now, strength wise, this clash sent them both flying, but for different reasons. Neji's rotation technique, as explained by Tenten blocks and repels his opponent's chakra, which means that Naruto wasn't blown away by the rotation itself. He also tanked the force of his own attack. A lot of people don't know this, but that's actually what the rotation does. Now, I say tanked because Naruto immediately recovered, created a shadow clone to trick Neji, then dug a hole under the ground using his bare hands so that he could land a surprise uppercut on Neji that disabled him permanently. All this while Neji was still lying on the ground after using his rotation that repelled Naruto's attack upon Naruto. Another thing to note is that even though Neji's rotation blocks attacks and repels chakra, Naruto was still able to bypass it since Neji was visibly damaged after they collided. So in essence, Naruto was able to breach Neji's absolute defense, and what this means is that Naruto is already above Neji in speed, strength, and durability by the end of this fight. Additionally, we have this databook statement saying that this is the moment where the dead last Naruto surpassed the genius. So that's pretty much it for that point. Now, while Naruto's scaling so far has been pretty much straightforward, Sasuke on the other hand is a little more complicated but doable. In this section, we're actually going to include Lee not as a participant but more so as a guide to scale Sasuke. Now, as we know, Sasuke and Lee both fought Gaara at different points in the Chunin exams. Some would argue that Sasuke fought a stronger version of Gaara, which was never explicitly stated to be the case. The entire thing came from Gaara saying that the bitter crimson tears flow from lifeless eyes and mingle with the endless sands, bestowing even greater power upon the demon god, which people took to mean that Gaara's sand gets stronger every time he kills. Now, the more likely case is that Gaara is referring to Shukaku, since he said that it will bestow power upon the demon god. However, the stand that protects Gaara isn't the demon god, but Gaara's mother's spirit that somehow latched onto him when she died. A key thing to note is that his mother's will isn't tied to a specific sand as in the sand that's in his ground. Her spirit is within Gaara himself, as it will manipulate any sand in the area to protect Gaara, as seen when he was a kid, which is before he got the ground. I know that some were under the impression that it was Shukaku who was protecting Gaara, but that's not the case since Gaara's sand does the same thing post losing Shukaku. It is also confirmed that it was his mother's will all along by Gaara's father during the war arc. I say all of this to say that there's zero mechanic by which Gaara's sand, which is his mother's will to protect him, would get stronger by way of killing. Gaara's sand is just sand. It doesn't absorb chakra to get stronger, so by no mechanic should it be getting stronger by killing. In fact, the only established way of Gaara's sand getting stronger is by mixing the sand with other minerals from the earth similar to iron sand or gold sand. As for Shukaku, there isn't any mechanic by which a Biju gets stronger by killing, but we do know that they can get stronger through hatred, which was the case for the Ninetales. Shukaku was referred to as the Sand Demon, aka the demon god referred to in this panel, always taunted Gaara when he was a kid. He was the voice inside his head telling him to kill. That's because Shukaku found joy in killing, as seen when he fully possessed Gaara versus Naruto. We even see Gaara talking to Shukaku versus Sasuke, saying that he's sorry that he fed him bad tasting blood earlier, which is referring to the two guys he killed before the beginning of the fight. He then says that he is sure Sasuke will be tasty, and that's not due to power. It's due to the hatred he sees in Sasuke's eyes. He says that Sasuke is just like him, which is why he wants to fight him. Another thing to note here is that Gaara refers to the voice in his head as both his mother and the demon god, and that's because Gaara at this point in the series thinks that the sand protecting him was the demon god because his uncle told him that his mother never loved him, which was a lie Gaara's dad forced him to tell. He then saw his mother and the demon god as one in the same for some weird reason, which is why he says the demon god will get stronger when he feeds it blood, and then calls the demon god mother when saying that he's sorry he fed it bad tasting blood earlier. It's weird, but Gaara is weird. He's basically a mental case at this point. Again, this was clarified in the war arc when Gaara met his dad as an Edo. I say all of this to say that Gaara's sand, which protects him due to his mother's will, not Shukaku's, or the sand armor he creates and maintains using his own chakra as confirmed by Kankuro, doesn't get stronger when he kills, because there's simply no merit or mechanic behind the idea. The only person who gains from Gaara killing is Shukaku, who is amped by hatred and despair, and only quiets down after Gaara quenches his thirst for blood, which is exactly what Gaara said in this panel. With that out of the way, kicking off the fight at the Chunin exams, we see that Sasuke is able to damage Gaara's sand armor with a single punch, similar to what Lee did before him. The difference here is that while Sasuke was only able to put a small crack on Gaara's sand armor, Lee completely shattered it with one punch, to the point where the entire shield started to come apart, which prompted Gaara to not only just repair the shield, but to add more sand to the already existing surface area, something he never did against Sasuke. In fact, Sasuke then went on to land 2 or so more kicks on Gaara, which didn't amount to the same damage Weightless Lee did with one punch. And this kinda implies that Lee's attack potency, of course referring to his striking strength, is actually greater than Sasuke's. Unless you think that Sasuke was holding back for some weird reason, which would be impossible to prove, so why try? The more logical conclusion is that Lee's just physically stronger, and I'm not even talking about 8 gates. Speed-wise, Sasuke's speed in this fight was first compared to Lee's average speed by my guy, then later compared to the speed of Weightless Lee, which means that Sasuke's speed doesn't compare to the speed of Lee in any of the 8 gates since they would scale above Weightless Lee. Lee even said that it took him years to achieve that level of speed, but Sasuke attained it in just 1 month. But here's the catch. Lee also noted that maintaining that level of speed still expends quite a lot of energy after seeing Sasuke huffing and puffing after just his second attack. Guy even noted that Kakashi watched the fight between Gaara and Lee, so he has to know that hastily prepared taijutsu wouldn't work against Gaara when even Lee couldn't defeat him. What this means is that while Sasuke is able to achieve speeds practically on the level of Weightless Lee, he isn't able to maintain that level of speed for long periods of time. He gets tired quickly as opposed to Lee, who was able to maintain that level of speed and even greater strain with 8 gates way longer than Sasuke could. This could mean that Sasuke just lacks the stamina, or it could be because it's hastily prepared taijutsu as Guy stated. Either way, this proves that Lee would still be above this version of Sasuke in strength, per defeats, and stamina even without gates. They are likely relative in speed, but Lee can maintain his a lot longer. Add gates to the list and Sasuke would get absolutely destroyed by this version of Lee, since Sasuke doesn't have the defensive hacks Gaara did. Now Sasuke does have the Sharingan, which does give him an advantage over Gaara Lee never had. Lee even said it himself that he couldn't have launched a head-on attack at full speed on Gaara because it's easy to counter and he doesn't have the eyes to perceive and see through that counter, which is exactly what Sasuke was able to do with his Sharingan. So basically, speed increases momentum and force is equal to the change in momentum over the change in time. So if Lee was able to land a head-on attack on Gaara from a distance, the force of his attack would have been greater, thus doing more damage. However, Lee isn't able to do that since he can't perceive Gaara's counters like Sasuke did with his Sharingan. That brings us to this databook statement which says that Sasuke is Gaara's strongest opponent, which implies that Sasuke at this point is stronger than 5th Gate's Lee, since that was the last version of Lee who fought Gaara. Now that wouldn't make sense since Weightless Lee did more damage to Gaara's sand armor in one punch than what Sasuke did with multiple hits, and we've already established that by no mechanic does Gaara's sand actually get stronger. So if we combine the feats with statements, it's more likely that this statement is referring to Gaara's perception of Sasuke being the strongest due to his hatred, due to Sasuke being just like him. He even said so when he interrupted Sasuke's training and Sasuke asked him why he wanted to fight him. He said that Sasuke has eyes that knows real isolation, eyes that recognizes it as the greatest pain in the world. Sasuke has eyes just like his, eyes seeking strength spilling over with hatred and intent to kill. Gaara at this point in the series links strength to hatred and confirms his existence by asserting that the more hatred you have, the stronger you will be. That's why when Sasuke was losing to him in the forest, he told Sasuke that he's weak because his hatred is not enough, that his hatred will never match his, so he'll always be weaker. So Gaara at this point in the series thinks that Sasuke is the strongest because his worldview is that your strength is based on the level of hate you feel, which Naruto challenges later on in the forest, but we'll get into that later on. There's also this narrative around Sasuke being the strongest even prior to the Chunin exams, only due to the fact that he's an Uchiha. In fact, most of the participants came just to see Sasuke fight. Lee even challenged Sasuke because of his Uchiha name. He wanted to see where his power stacked up against him. What I'm trying to say is that Sasuke had a lot of clout around him being the strongest of the leaf purely due to his name and not much else. There's also this one anime promotional material that says Sasuke arrives and now the confrontation between the best of the sand and the leaf leaves will begin, which people interpret to mean that Sasuke is in fact the strongest of the leaf. Of course they're talking about the Chunins here, not the actual Jonins like Kakashi and Guy. Of course, put the statement into context, that's the only way it makes sense. Now aside from the fact that this is an anime promotional material, meaning that it's non-canon material that should not be facilitated in any real debate, the statement wouldn't even make sense because Sasuke before this very moment got bodied by weighted Lee, which would mean that he would get bodied by Neji who scales above weighted Lee at least. So what feats are they using to scale Sasuke above all those characters when the fight hasn't even happened as yet? Then we get on to the fight and Sasuke is compared to weightless Lee in speed and does less damage than Lee did without 8 gates. It just doesn't make sense. Again, this is only an argument you'd make if you even facilitated this promo material as canon, which it isn't. Now Sasuke being stronger than Lee can actually be argued if it's entirely based around the Chidori. The Chidori did actually make Gaara bleed, something 5th Gates Lee never did. The context missing here is that the Chidori is actually a piercing attack that also uses lightning release, something sand is weak to since earth is weak to lightning on the nature element scale. So the attack itself isn't just about strength but also the effect caused by the elemental damage. So is the Chidori actually stronger than a 5th gate kick without the elemental effect it had on Gaara's sand? As in, would the Chidori do more damage than Lee if Gaara's defense was water or ice based instead? Probably, but I say this to say that we can understand the intricacies behind being strong and having a stronger attack. That was the only winning factor between Lee and Sasuke. Guy and Kakashi confirmed that themselves. Sasuke had an ability that directly countered Gaara's sand coupled with an eye that could perceive any counters while Lee didn't. However, versus Lee, would Sasuke be able to charge and land that attack? I highly doubt it. Now Sasuke did win his fight against Gaara because Gaara had a mental meltdown due to seeing his blood for the first time to the point where he stopped his transformation. So if we remove the premise of the invasion, Gaara would still be eliminated since he lost consciousness and had to be carried away by Temari and Kankuro. If Gaara had transformed immediately, then we could have used his transformation state against Sasuke, but he didn't, so he would be eliminated by the Proctor. So Sasuke moves on to the next stage. Now per the match setup we got earlier in the tournament, Shino would be facing Kankuro and it would likely turn out the way it did in the forest when they fought, with the fight being a draw since they both disabled each other. They will both get disqualified, so Temari would likely move on to the next stage. Now we have a fight between Naruto and Sasuke to decide who would fight Temari in the finals. We did do some scaling earlier on where we concluded that Naruto using the Nine Tails cloak scales above Neji in speed, durability, and attack potency. The Sasuke who fought Gaara scales too weightlessly in speed but scales lower in attack potency as it relates to his striking strength, excluding the Chidori. There really weren't any durability feats since Sasuke didn't really get hit. He only got a few flesh wounds when he tried to attack Gaara's sand shield whilst Lee tanked multiple hits from Gaara. Now we can't use this to say that Lee's more durable than Sasuke since Sasuke doesn't have any feats to compare. Now Sasuke did get hit by a partial possession Gaara and survived, but he was severely weakened after taking the hit, so I wouldn't use that to scale him above Lee, and I can't use that to scale Lee anyway because Lee didn't fight that version of Gaara. So it would be headcanon to say that Lee can tank the hit or say that Lee wouldn't have been able to tank the hit, so let's just say that they're somewhat relative. Now the reason why the Lee scaling is important for Sasuke is that Lee couldn't beat Neji, the same Neji who lost to Naruto. Now we don't know the details as to why Lee couldn't defeat Neji, all we know is that he couldn't and Lee considered him the strongest genin in the village. Now it couldn't be speed wise since Guy himself stated that in terms of speed that Lee can't be surpassed, which implies that Lee is the fastest out of the genins, which includes Neji. Mind you, this was only reference to weighted Lee, not Lee using gates. It's also implied that Neji has never seen gates Lee since he didn't know what the reverse lotus was and was surprised at Lee's monstrous speed. I mean, it was literally stated by Lee himself that this was a move he was keeping in reserve to be used against Neji in the Chunin exam. He never said this about weights, and Neji had no reaction to weightless Lee, which implies that Neji has seen or fought weightless Lee before. Now you could use Guy's statement to scale weightless Lee above Neji since he said that Lee was the fastest while he was weightless. Or you could say that he was including Gates Lee in that statement since he has knowledge of Lee's speed in that form. What this does is give you somewhat of a wiggle room to scale Neji to or above weightless Lee in speed. However, it's more likely that he does scale to weightless Lee in speed since if he didn't, didn't, Lee would have been able to blitz him before he could use his rotation ability. Since we know that he wasn't able to beat Neji, it's highly likely that he wasn't fast enough to bypass his defenses, like he did versus Gaara. This is somewhat confirmed to be the case since Guy in reference to Gates Lee said that the answer to take down Neji was high speed taijutsu combination, which implies that speed is still the winning factor against Neji, which means that Lee wasn't fast enough before. We also deduced earlier that Neji's rotation activation speed is greater than his actual movement speed per his reaction to Naruto on 2 occasions, but not by a lot. Now what this does is allow us to scale Kurama Am to Naruto to weightless Lee in speed, since Neji likely scaled to that version of Lee as well. That would then allow us to scale Kurama Am to Naruto to Sasuke in speed, since Sasuke scaled to weightless Lee per the feats and statement we discussed earlier. We also know that this Naruto was able to bypass Neji's defense since Neji was visibly damaged by Naruto colliding with him, even though most of the force of the attack was reflected upon Naruto per Tenten's statement. This even surprised Tenten, who referred to Neji's defense as absolute earlier on in the fight, which means that it was never bypassed before, not even by Lee. This means that Kurama Am to Naruto scales above weightless Lee in physical strength, while Sasuke scales below per feats. This would mean that Kurama Am to Naruto scales above Sasuke in physical strength. Durability and stamina is a no-brainer for Naruto, since a weaker version of Naruto who could barely stand after the Neji fight was able to tank multiple attacks from a way stronger version of Gaara that Sasuke fought. Naruto is even just flat out stated to have the best stamina on the team by multiple characters. Naruto is even able to outmaneuver and react to this version of Gaara, albeit that Gaara said that this was due to him underestimating Naruto. However, Naruto was able to beat the brakes off of Shukaku Cloak Gaara using his multi-shadow clone jutsu after he remembers Aku's words and taps into his extensive reserves of chakra. And this was in fact Naruto's chakra, since he later said that he used up all of his chakra to create the shadow clones just now, which prompts him to tap into Kurama's chakra and summon Gamabunta. Then after getting caught by Shukaku's sand again, Naruto tapped into even more of Kurama's chakra, so powerful that it instantly blew away Shukaku's sand and ripped open Naruto's clothing. I mentioned Aku's words when I said earlier on that Naruto challenged Gaara's hatred perspective of strength, and Naruto disproves that using love and his will to protect others, pushing him above anything Sasuke was able to achieve prior, which debunks Gaara's entire worldview that hatred makes you the strongest, which means that Sasuke was never the strongest. Naruto had this power within him all along, which is basically what a mental amp is. A mental amp isn't something that you're not capable of doing. Like, a mental amp doesn't give you power that you never had. It's power you already had but never accessed for whatever limitations you had mentally or physically. Naruto even said that the reason why he didn't unleash his power, the reason why he thought he couldn't defeat Gaara, which is what was limiting him mentally, is because he thought Gaara was stronger than himself, because Gaara remained in the darkness he left due to the love he received from his comrades. He then remembers Haku's words, which allows him to remove the mental limitations he had prior, which allows him to find the strength needed to defeat Gaara. Now, as it relates to the Nine-Tails chakra, the question would be, in a fight versus Sasuke, would Naruto use the power? The answer is yes. Aside from Naruto literally using it against Sasuke in the final valley, which you could argue that the stakes are higher, so that doesn't mean that Naruto would use it in the Chunin exams. You could argue that since Naruto used it against Neji, he would definitely use it against Sasuke if it comes to it, since Naruto's entire motivation for participating in these exams was so that he could beat Sasuke. So there's no reason why Naruto would hold back against him, especially since he doesn't know the dangers of using the Nine-Tails chakra at this point in time. However, Sasuke likely wouldn't use Chidori and Naruto since they aren't at the killing phase of their relationship as yet. Kakashi mainly taught him that ability to use as a counter to Gaara's sand. But let's just say we're not holding them back, we're going all out. Naruto would then summon Gamabunta and it would be GG's for Sasuke. Mind you, there aren't any rules in the final round of the exams. You're able to do whatever you want, even kill your opponents. Now the proctor can step in before that happens, but that's up to his discretion. So Naruto is well within his rights to summon Gamabunta, as was he within his rights to use the chakra of the Nine-Tails, something everyone noticed. Now the real question here is, would Gamabunta fight for Naruto, since he didn't even care to fight Shukaku until Gamakichi told him to? Naruto could still use the summoning to his advantage either way, regardless of whether Gamabunta fights Sasuke or not. Combined with his Kurama chakra that makes him faster than Neji, that has the speeds comparable to weightless Lee, and strength that puts him above weightless weightlessly with Sasuke's scales below per feats, Naruto could easily dodge Sasuke's Chidori with the speeds he can achieve and not being stationary like Gaara. Now if Sasuke does manage to deal a fatal blow to Naruto with Chidori, we know what would happen then. So GG's. Sasuke also has one use left for the Chidori since he can only use it twice in one day. If he tries to use it a third time, he would collapse as he did versus Gaara after pulling it off using the curse mark. Naruto using Kurama's cloak is just faster, stronger, and more durable than Chunin exam Sasuke, and he has a healing factor which Sasuke doesn't. He would likely win even without Gamabunta. Curse mark isn't really an option for Sasuke at this point in the show, since it would likely play out the same way it did against Gaara when he activated it. He would just pass out. Naruto would beat Sasuke of course, and then Naruto would then go on to fight Temari with his monstrous stamina after being healed by the Nine-Tails chakra again, just to fold Temari pretty easily, then win the Chunin exams. So out of all the fighters, we've gone through the scalings, we've compared the characters, and at the end of the day, I think Naruto would be the clear victor if the invasion didn't happen. Naruto just has this amazing thing called the Nine-Tails that wouldn't make him lose. It wouldn't make him die, he would live. And the power that Naruto has with the Nine-Tails is not limited by any means, as seen when he fought Gaara. Notice I didn't even use the second stage to the transformation that Naruto used versus Gaara, and as we know that was way more stronger, way more powerful than the one he used against Neji, since that aura blew away his entire clothing and actually blew away Shukaku's sand itself. So if Naruto was to, let's say, somehow lose in the version 1 version that he used against Neji to Sasuke, he would just tap into more of the Nine-Tails chakra to achieve the power he achieved against Gaara. So Naruto would then be way more powerful than he was against Neji, and that version of Naruto would absolutely mop Sasuke either way. So whether or not Sasuke is able to land a Chidori or not, Naruto would simply heal with the healing factor he has because the Nine-Tails wouldn't let him die. They would actually murk Sasuke in version 1 cloak, and again, there are no rules to the Chunin exams. So the only way Sasuke survives this is if someone steps in and stops Naruto, if Naruto goes berserk. We also have to factor in that Sasuke at this point is pretty weakened because he's huffing and puffing when fighting Gaara. So you have to understand that Naruto has a healing factor and enhanced stamina, so Naruto at this point has enough stamina to whoop Sasuke while Sasuke is getting more tired as the time goes by and not healing by any means. So Naruto just has the hacks as it relates to his abilities from the Nine-Tails, and he just fold Sasuke based on his feats against Neji and the Gaara. So I also said that I want to explain why Neji's defense is probably stronger than Gaara's, and it has less to do with the strength as in the physical strength of the chakra he puts around him, but more so to do with the effect of the attack itself. So a lot of people don't know that it reflects the strength of your attack onto you. So if someone attacks Neji with a chakra based attack, the chakra itself is reflected on you, the force of the chakra. If it's just a physical punch, you get repelled and blown away. If it's a chakra based attack, let's say a Chidori for example, the effects of the Chidori would be blown back on Sasuke if he uses it on Neji. So that's the thing, that's the difference, the big difference between Gaara's attack and Neji's attack. Gaara's attack just tanks anything that comes towards it, so you can actually beat it down with the full force of your attack, while Neji's attack also blocks your punch or your power, but it also reflects it upon you. So Neji's defense is doing two things while Gaara's is doing one. So Neji's defense, as touted in the series as being the absolute defense, stated by Tenten, again Tenten's statement is made from ignorance because she knows nothing about Gaara when she says that it's stronger than Gaara's. But when you stack up what the ability does and the feats it has against a Nine-Tails amp to Naruto, who was able to beat through Gaara's defense without the Nine-Tails amp in the forest, it kinda proves Neji's defense is probably stronger than Gaara's defense even without the Tenten statement. And you could say that the Tenten statement is just like the author letting us know through another character, and then we add on the feats itself and just proves and just maths out to be the same thing, even though we can't take the statement itself by itself to prove it. You have to like compound evidence, and that's what you have to do to prove that Neji's defense is likely stronger and would hold up against a stronger attack as opposed to Gaara's defense. I also wanted to address this point because people will say that because Gaara went into the ball of sand, the sand shield against Sasuke, and he didn't do it against Lee, that means that somehow somehow Sasuke is stronger than Lee, and Gaara sees Sasuke as more of a threat. Now, people remove the context of the fight itself. There's nothing Sasuke did against Gaara. So if you think about this logically, there's nothing Sasuke did against Gaara that Lee didn't do. So obviously it can't be solely because of what Sasuke did why Gaara went into that ball. Now the context you'd add to that situation is that Gaara fought Lee before and he saw what Lee was able to do. Lee almost beat him. Now Gaara is a smart character, he's very intelligent. He sees that Sasuke is achieving speed the same as weightless Lee, and he says this, he's almost as fast as that guy. He takes this into account and says that he's not gonna take the beating that he did against Lee, which is why he rushes to transform into a more powerful state so that he could beat Sasuke. That's a more logical take as to why Gaara went into the Sand Shield. It's the context behind fighting someone like Lee before and then comparing him to Sasuke, which is why he rushes to transform. It's not because Sasuke did more damage to Gaara than Lee did, because that's obviously provably incorrect. So again, people remove context from the situations and shit and saying that, oh, Gaara saw him as more of a threat, which is why he went into the Sand Shield. Gaara, you could argue that Gaara wouldn't have gone into the Sand Shield if he didn't fight Lee before, because that's out of character for him. When he did, everyone was saying, why is he doing it? Because it's out of character. The reason why Gaara did it, as I said earlier, is because of the fight he had with Lee and what Lee was capable of doing with this speed, and he didn't want that to happen again. Now you could argue that if Gaara did what he did against Lee, he could have beaten Sasuke. All he had to do was take the beating as he did against Lee and allow Sasuke to wear himself down, because Sasuke was getting tired. But Gaara panicked and decided that, okay, cool, this guy has the same speed as the guy who almost beat me. Let me go into a stronger state and defeat him quickly, right? So I think that's the more logical take to have on the situation. Now I do think Sasuke had advantages, which was the Chidori and the Sharingan. More so the Chidori, because that's what he used to pierce Gaara's skin. That's what he used to pierce Gaara's Sand Shield. And the reason why Lee wasn't able to do that is because he didn't have any ninjutsu based attack that nullified sand, which is exactly what lightning release does. So that was really the deciding factor between Lee losing and Sasuke winning. It wasn't because Sasuke was somehow like physically stronger than Lee, because there's no way to prove that based on feats. Either way, I think that will be it for the video. This video is what, 35 minutes at this point? I thought it was going to be 25, but you know, I added some things that I don't think I needed to, but I'll just leave it in and you guys can just, you know, have a blast in the comment section, of course. But let me know what you guys think about the video itself. Drop a like in the comment section. Jesus Christ, drop a like in the comment section. Bro, I'm really tired, bro. I'm really tired. But yeah, drop a like and drop a comment in the comment section. And of course, subscribe to the channel if you are new. And look out for more content just like this one. But above all else, guys, have a great day. Peace out.